The Chargers gave us some fireworks on day one of the NFL draft, selecting Omarion Hampton with the 22nd overall pick, who is a workhorse and feels like a perfect fit for what Jim Harbaugh is building in Los Angeles.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there who waited a long time for this night, for making us your first listen as always, and to make sure that you never miss the shows we have, especially tomorrow's bonus show after day 2. Go subscribe or follow for free in the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. And we have a big one for you guys tonight. The pick is in. The Chargers have taken Omarion Hampton, the running back from North Carolina. The board didn't fall great to them, but it feels like they got a first-round player and someone that definitely feels like they fit what they're trying to build in Los Angeles. So we're going to talk about that, talk about if they should have potentially traded back with how the board fell to them, because there were some crazy things that happened before it got to pick 22. How now Omarion Hampton will forever be linked to Ashton Jeanty, who ends up in the AFC West, and the Broncos, who passed on him. And then we'll talk about the biggest needs the Chargers have left and the best available players that we like for them in day 2 and beyond. But today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. David, we'll talk about all the surrounding circumstances, but we talked a little bit about North Carolina running back Omarion Hampton. The one thing that kept coming up is just it feels like this is a very Jim Harbaugh guy. Before we knew who was going to be available to him, it didn't seem like he would be there. A lot of people thought that the Broncos were going to take him, but the Chargers had the board fall a certain way where maybe their biggest needs were off the board and the best guys at those positions were off the board. And as far as the pick itself, I like the pick. Taking everything else out of it, Omarion Hampton is a first-round pick. He's someone that fits in your system and someone that should bring a big upgrade to your running game, even if you already have Najee Harris in the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was a little bit surprised for sure. I did not think it was going to be running back. I'm not mad at it, though, at all. I mean, looking at Omarion Hampton, the player, this guy's dynamic. And yeah, it screams Jim Harbaugh. It's Jim Harbaugh type player written all over it. This is a guy who invites contact, that loves contact, that is a bruiser, that is just a productive running back and can kind of do a little bit of everything. He has a very complete game, and for the Chargers to add that to their backfield, I think just looking at the production and looking at, the pick and the value, I do agree that he was a first round talent, and I'm really not upset at it. I can really see a future where he is a big part of this Chargers offense in very short order.
Yeah, and he's good enough to start for them in year 1. They obviously have a guy, Najee Harris, who's going to get the first crack at it. But when we were talking about if somebody could supplant Najee Harris, we didn't think they would take a running back early enough to be that guy, and they did. And let's be honest, if you made a running back in a laboratory that was tailor-made for what Jim Harbaugh wants to be as a football team, it will come out looking a lot like Omarion Hampton. That's just what it is. They've told us since day 1 they want to improve the running game, and we'll talk about some of the other ways they have to do it. I think the Chargers running game also kind of, got really lucky with the way that playoff game unfolded, because it's easy to forget that in that game they had 18 carries for 50 yards and averaged 2.8 yards per carry. Neither of their starters averaged more than 3.1 yards per carry, and that was Gus Edwards. And last season overall, 9 games averaging 3.9 yards per carry or less, and they only had 3 games in the totality of last season where they averaged 4.2 yards per carry or more as a team. 14 games, they averaged less than 4.2 yards per carry or less. It's just not good enough. There's other ways they have to improve the running game too with the offensive line. But as far as the fit goes, it makes a ton of sense. And I mean, we're talking about a player in Omarion Hampton who's a 2-time first-team All-American, did not miss a game in college, so he has the durability. And I think he's also underrated as a pass catcher. I mean, last season, 38 catches, 373 yards, averaging almost 10 yards per reception. That's really good. And then you add in the fact that although he is a bruiser, he tested exceptionally well, ran in the 4.4s in his 40-yard dash, super good explosiveness grades, both in the 88th percent or the 91st percentile or better. This is a dude that sees a crease and he might not hit 100, a bunch of 60-yard touchdowns, David, but this is a dude who has a bunch of 20+ yard carries written all over him because he doesn't need much to get into the secondary. And once he's in the secondary, he's really, really hard for one defensive back or linebacker to take down.
No question about it. Also, he totaled 19 100 rushing yard games, which is the third most in the nation over his 3-year career at UNC in college football. Last year, just unbelievable production. We're talking 1,660 rushing yards, 5.9 yards per carry average, and 15 rushing touchdowns to go along with 38 receptions for 373 yards. And also, you put on the tape, you watch him as a pass protector, this guy's deleting defensive players, like just putting them in the dirt. Like, they don't even get close. Like, he breaks tackles on almost every single time he touches the football, has excellent contact balance, very rarely goes backwards, runs angry and invites contact. I mean, he runs over people regularly. You see it almost every time you put on the tape. He does not quit. Also, I love his effort. He chased down a defender after an interception and kind of prevented a touchdown there. Also has really soft hands, a natural pass catcher. This is a running back that you do not have to take off the football field. He can pass protect. He can run through the tackles. He can run around you. He can run through you. And he has good hands. He's going to be an asset out of the backfield as a pass-catching running back. So it really, this is a pick that, I think is going to absolutely help the Chargers offense get more balance. We already know how dangerous Justin Herbert is in play action. Imagine having Omarion Hampton adding to that offense, making it that much more deceptive because now you really have to defend against the run.
That's what you hope for, right? And it feels like this is a guy that can help kind of get them over the top after really trying to commit to the run last year, but still not being an effective unit for pretty much the first time in a Greg Roman offense in his coaching history. And it just wasn't good enough. And there's more to it than just the running backs, but having a super talented running back like this, I think really gives you a good step in the right direction. And he is a guy that I don't think is super elusive. I don't think the elusiveness is special there, but he doesn't need much space to break a tackle just because of how strong he is. He is more of a straight line kind of explosive type of player. But I do think what he brings to the table as far as being a future 3-down back that can be your franchise guy, to have that guy under contract for the next 5 seasons at a very reasonable contract when it's not really in vogue to pay running backs, and a guy who has kind of, very durable, but has a very violent and physical play style that you don't know how many years he's going to have in the NFL. You're going to have him for the prime of his career and get all of those good carries, hopefully going towards something big for the Chargers. Because when you make this kind of pick, this is a luxury pick. When you do this, you're saying, hey, these guys' carries, Daniel Jeremiah said it best. You want the running backs' carries to matter. Every one of them, if you're going to take one in the first round. Yeah. They think his carries are going to matter. And having Najee Harris didn't dissuade them from bringing him in. And now with what you have, David, they told us, right? They always tell us. Joe Ortiz said, we don't necessarily have to take a back that has contrasting skills to Najee Harris. And they're different backs, but now you just have a battering duo with him and Najee Harris in the backfield. I think guys that are going to make other teams question if they love football really every single week.
Absolutely. They're going to drag these defenses into the deep water, and they're going to really punish them snap after snap after snap. When you talk about putting a game away, these are the type of running backs that allow you to do that. You want to close in victory formation. You want to bleed the clock out. This is what you do if you want to bleed the clock out. You have a Mekhi Becton on your offensive line opening up massive holes for Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris, who, hey, Najee Harris, 5th most forced missed tackles last year. Omarion Hampton, 73 missed tackles forced last year in college football. Both of these guys know how to break tackles. They know how to get extra tough yards, and they know how to close out football games. So I'm very excited to see what this is going to do to the Chargers offense. I think it's going to make it more dynamic. I think it's going to make it a lot more difficult to defend.
I think so too. A great running game definitely helps Justin Herbert. They still need pass catchers. They still need protection for it, but a great running game helps that. And I think now you go get a Mauler at offensive guard to play at left guard for you. Now your running game is in business. And, they're kind of turning back the clock a little bit. They want to out-physical teams. They want to be able to go up against Patrick Mahomes and shrink a game away a little bit, right? And limit the possessions and beat them down. This is what they want to do, and it's what they've told us all along. In the long term, I don't think it's a great thing for Najee Harris, who's on a 1-year deal. But for this season, man, it's not a backfield that I'd want to be staring at. If I'm down in the fourth quarter trying to get the ball back, I don't want to see Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton with fresh legs on the other side
downhill
of that football. But it also, I think, was a byproduct of how the board fell. And David, they used up every single second of their draft clock.
Yeah, they did.
The real question is, should they have maybe traded back? We're going to talk about that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs, because as a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do, and that's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free and share it with your network and get qualified candidates all in one place. And LinkedIn's new feature can help you write a job description and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say that LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. That is what makes the difference, is the quality of hires you get with LinkedIn. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. David, now it's time to talk about what else could have happened on draft night, because we had talked about, hey, Joe Ortiz has had the 22nd pick with the Ravens in that organization multiple times over the last 6-7 years. And both times he traded away from that pick. And then when you look at kind of how everything went down, when they turned the camera onto that Chargers war room, it looked tense. Hard decisions looked like they were being made there. And according to Joe Ortiz, they had calls to potentially trade back in the first round. And I think there's a couple different ways to look at it there, because you can look at it and say, okay, well, if their calls are there, trade back, because a lot of those big guys, a lot of those dream picks you had aren't on the board anyways. But the other way to look at it is this. Had they traded back 4 or 5 picks with all the guys that we wanted to see in bolds already on other teams, who would have been left for them? Would you have been happy with that at that point? Because what you're talking about for the Chargers at that pick is taking, the 5th or 6th best defensive tackle, or the 4th or 5th best edge rusher, or the 4th best wide receiver. You know what I mean? It's not like there was one guy there where I'm like, oh my God, that was the guy. So I understand them not trading back. Now, if the Falcons had called up and wanted to add a 2026 first round pick, maybe that gets the conversation going. But it definitely seems like they considered it. There was something going down in that room and decided, hey, this is a guy we want to stick and pick.
Hey, they did their due diligence. They exhausted literally every single second of their 10-minute clock. So they were on the phones, they were running the numbers, but they ultimately ended up deciding to stay with running back, staying with Omarion Hampton. And hey, I really like the player. I don't necessarily love the positional value of taking a running back in the first round. And part of that for me is probably some scar tissue, right? I mean, the last 2 running backs that the Chargers took in the first round, Melvin Gordon, Ryan Matthews, it didn't work out. And so, I think, naturally that's going to give you some pause in, them taking another running back. But as, you pointed out to me, it is a brand new organization. And so they are going to do things a little bit differently, but they've been pretty straightforward with all of their plans, at least early on. Hey, we're going to go get an offensive lineman. We think they're weapons. That's exactly what they did. Hey, we're going to improve the running game. Well, they took a running back in the first round. So, obviously they were convicted, but I think, I appreciate the fact that they stayed on the phones, they went through it, and ultimately they stuck with who they, didn't think was going to be there, and they took him.
Yeah, and they said it was unanimous in that room. They all wanted Omarion Hampton. They never thought that he would get to them, but the conversations did happen of what they would do. And I think that's, theoretically what happened, right? They're getting these offers, maybe some good offers, but they really love the pick. Now, I would have potentially traded back, especially seeing how the board fell, and tried to get more top 100 picks if that was available, and you don't know that it was. At the same time, he is one of the only guys I would have really been happy with at that point, at pick 22, and they got him. We really liked the player that he was. Clearly the second best running back in this draft class. They end up also going with not kind of they went with someone that has Najee Harris's skill set instead of potentially reaching for someone like a Travion Henderson. And I do believe that would have been a reach if they had taken him at 22. So I think they maybe should have traded back, but I like the player that they got. I think there's an argument on both sides of it. And I think the biggest argument for them trading back is it's supposedly a really good running back draft, and you decided to take one in the first round. That being said, The other guys, because you talked about the 2 first-round picks that failed, the one before that was LaDainian Tomlinson, obviously, who's a Hall of Fame running back.
Yeah.
The other thing is you've tried taking these running backs on day 3 and beyond, and
Hasn't
it's
worked.
never worked out. We talked about them potentially using those big-time resources to improve that position, and now you potentially have a long-term franchise back. The other part of it is the board just did not fall to the Chargers well. And that's another reason I'm behind the pick is just if there were other guys available that I liked a lot more, I would have more of an issue with the pick. But David, man, all of the guys we talked about, right, outside of, Matthew Golden, outside of Will Johnson, who falls out of the first round completely, like those guys were gone, man. Like all of those dudes, all the interior defensive linemen, all the interior offensive linemen, everyone was gone.
Yeah, I just remember you texting me saying, nightmare scenario. Just really, but it really was. I mean, you look at it. Teteroa McMillan went 8th to the Carolina Panthers. Colston Loveland, that was a pipe dream. He went 10th. He was the first tight end off the board.
I know.
And he went to Chicago. Tyler Booker went way before anybody expected him to go. He went 12th to the Cowboys.
Sheesh.
Kenneth Grant went 13th to the Dolphins. And then right after that, Tyler Warren goes off the board to the Colts, which I'm sure are ecstatic that he fell directly in their laps. Walter Nolan goes 16th to the Cardinals. Gray Zabel, 18th to the Seahawks. Derek Harmon, 1 pick away from the Chargers. Instead of the Steelers taking Shadur Sanders, they go with Derek Harmon at 21. And so all of those top guys that we talked about, the top tight ends, the top wide receivers, the top defensive linemen, all gone.
Yeah, I mean, even, Gray Zabel with the Seahawks, like it was just like anyone you could have considered there, beforehand was basically gone. I think the big thing that hurt them there, only 1 quarterback win, right?
Yeah.
That was what we were hoping for desperately in a bad quarterback class. We're like, hey, Daniel Jeremiah had 3 quarterbacks going before they're picking his wild final mock draft. So we're like, man, if that could happen, it's going to push some of these guys down. But, to see, Derek Harmon specifically, that would have been interesting. Had Derek Harmon made it and it was between those 2 guys, because we were very big on Derek Harmon, and it's also probably a more important position, getting a guy in the interior of that defensive line and a guy we liked better just as far as a prospect goes. Would they have gone that way even with Omarion Hampton still there? We won't know. But I mean, man, Kenneth Grant that early, all those dudes. Walter Nolan goes super early too. The quarterbacks and the lack thereof definitely hurt them. Maybe you hope a couple more tackles would have went before the Chargers picked. I wish 17 tackles would have went before the Chiefs got to pick. That's really what I hope for. But yeah, the board didn't fall well to them. And I think with what they had there, if they weren't going to trade back and just get premium resources, because you don't need more 6th and 7th round picks, right? You don't need more later picks. You have 4 6th round picks already. So what it tells me is maybe those premier picks weren't involved in those packages, and those teams, like the Giants ended up still finding a way to get back into the first round for less anyways. And then you have, what the Falcons did, which is just insane. But also, one of the things I took away from this, David, with Omarion Hampton specifically being the pick at 22, is looking around the AFC West and now seeing, Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh trying to kind of single-handedly turn back the clock of the NFL and send it into the olden days. The 2 top backs in the draft both end up in the AFC West. It hurt last year when the Raiders took Brock Bowers, and it hurt this year when the Raiders took Ashton Genty, because both those guys were just such elite prospects, and the Raiders are so bad they had a chance at both of them. But I think that is going to be interesting going forward, is just those 2 are always going to be connected. Same draft class, same division, squaring off with each other for potentially the next 5 seasons at least.
Man, I'm so used to the Raiders just having absolutely horrible drafts. I'm tired of this. 2 good first-round draft picks in a row. What is going on here? I don't like it. And, man, I hated this. Seeing Ashton Genty go to the Raiders. And, honestly, it felt like it was a foregone conclusion almost the whole time. It just felt like that was always going to be the pick. And I was just hoping and praying that it wasn't going to be, but it was. And so we got to strap up and get ready. They're going to have a bell cow running back that just destroyed college football last year. But hey, this is the NFL. It's the biggest, strongest, fastest, smartest athletes on the face of the earth. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, these 2 guys, Omarion Hampton, Ashton Genty, the top 2 running backs consensus in this draft, off the board in the AFC West, going to battle for the next, hopefully, 10 years.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, not many running backs make it 10 years, but, hopefully we will wish for the best there. I think the other interesting angle, too, is the Denver of it all, because they were a team throughout the draft process that was super linked to Omarion Hampton and what the Broncos wanted to do. They were also linked to Colston Loveland. They end up with neither of those kind of offensive weapons to try to kind of boost the offense around Bo Nixon and his impressive rookie season. But now, if Omarion Hampton ends up being that dude, and he is just one of the best backs in the league, it's going to be hard to think that the Broncos might not look back on that and be like, man, we had him who could have really boosted our offense. But instead, they got the guy who led NCAA last year in interceptions, which doesn't feel great either when he's going to be, lining up across from the defensive player of the year in 2024, Pat Surtain II. So interesting to see the Chiefs get their tackle 32nd, which just feels terrible after trading with the Eagles. Wish they got a really, really bad tackle prospect. We'll see how it ends up turning out. But Genty, Omarion Hampton, linked forever. Will the Broncos end up regretting that? We'll see, but we still have more to get into because it's just day one. The Chargers still have time to address a lot of their other bigger needs, but it does get harder now that you took a luxury pick and a running back in round one. So we're going to talk about the biggest needs left over and the best players available that could still fill them and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action because right now when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props, and after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win it big. I'm excited for tomorrow, the game between the Lakers and the Timberwolves. I like the Lakers to go up 2-1 in the series, and you can get them on the money line right now at plus 130, which I like. You can also get it at plus 3 if you want to take the spread. If you love player props, another one that I really like, Luka Doncic to make at least 3 or 4 3-point shots, you can get it plus 108 plus money. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, David, well, now it's about moving forward and now how the Chargers attack the rest of this draft class, knowing that when you go running back, you're leaving a lot of big needs still on the table, and that was always going to be the case. There's no position the Chargers could have taken in round one that would have fixed everything and would have made you feel great about the holes that you still see on the roster. That's just the fact of the matter. But we did have a show yesterday talking about, hey, these are the positions they have to fill in the first 3 days. Running back wasn't one of them. They would have been okay at running back had they waited with Najee Harris already in the backfield and the depth of this running back class. They got a premier guy there. But what it leaves is a lot of needs left going into day two, David. And I think the nice thing is there are some sweet spots for potentially what the Chargers still need and a lot of guys that are still available that we'll get to. But where do you look now as far as going into day two, as far as like, okay, well, now you went running back. Now you got to attack these things.
Yeah, I think the first two positions that come to mind, one offense, one defense, defensive line edge. Apparently according to, the insiders, Matt Miller, he's saying, hey, the Chargers are really prioritizing edge, which makes a lot of sense, knowing that Khalil Mack and Bud Dupree are on, the last years of their contracts or in 1-year contracts in Khalil Mack's case. So, yeah, I would look to see maybe them address that if the right option is there, and there's a couple of guys that make some sense there. Tight end, I think, is, our pass catcher, wide receiver, still a position group I feel like the Chargers have to address with an early pick. I mean, it's, I like adding on Omarion Hampton. I think Mike Williams is going to do things if he's on the field. I mean, Ladd McConkey's a beast, but they still need more. So, and then offensive line, right? Arming Justin Herbert with weapons, protecting him, getting him more armor so that he can go do his job, and getting somebody who can get after the quarterback on the defensive side. I think those right there are the hierarchy of needs that the Chargers need to be targeting with these premium picks here on day two.
Yeah, because on day two, they have 55, they have 86. And that's it. So that's where it stands as of now. Will the Chargers potentially try to get more picks and trade back from 55 potentially? Or do you maybe see those 6th-round picks come into play where maybe they go up and try to get a guy that they really like because a run starts at a position? All of those things are still on the table for them. But I would double down on all of those points. I mean, pass catching option for Justin Herbert, more firepower there. You still need it. Help on the defensive front, you still need, especially, the Are you going to get the heir apparent to Khalil Mack after round one? We'll see. I mean, they passed up on guys like Mike Green, who obviously has off the field concerns big time, or else he would be an obvious pick at 22. Yeah. And they should have taken him without that, but I understand them not taking him with the things he has going on off the field. And then you also have Donovan Ezraku, a guy they had a chance for in the first round. If they really wanted him to, if they really wanted him, they could have taken him there. And I think they got probably the guy who was the better prospect out of the two of them, Omarion Hampton, taking positional value out of it. But that is the other big thing, is just will they add a legitimate competition for the starting left guard spot? We weren't super high on the Najee Harris pickup right away in free agency, but the biggest part of that was that wasn't the biggest issue in your running game. J.K. Dobbins was good last year. The problem is the interior of your offensive line didn't help you out in that regard at all. And if you really want to help these running backs and really improve your running game, you need to make improvements. Right now, we're still, after day one, very early, still in a situation where you could see two of those three interior offensive linemen, even if they're playing at different positions, in the case of like a Bradley Bozeman or a Zion Johnson or even a Trey Pipkins, still on the roster and still in the starting lineup. That's what you're trying to avoid. Now, we found a guy, Dylan Fairchild on day 4 or on day 3 in round 4, that potentially they can still find that legitimate competition at left guard there. But that is huge. And if you want your running game to be a lot better, you have to invest in the offensive line as well, because that is really what's, good offensive lines can really elevate rushing attacks. But like, look at Saquon Barkley. Bad offensive lines can make you have a really bad season behind a bad one, and then a Super Bowl winning season behind a good one. But yeah, there are a lot of players still left, Dave, and I think the nice thing about day 2 for the Chargers is it's a sweet spot for weapons if they want to go that way, because there are still a lot of very talented pass catchers on the board, and if the Chargers really want to upgrade their firepower and find that guy to pair with Ladd McConkey, whether it's a tight end in round 2 or a receiver in round 2, those guys are still out there.
Yeah, a couple tight ends I really like on the board. Elijah Arroyo, Harold Fannin Jr., both available there in the second round. If they want to go wide receiver, Jaden Higgins from Iowa is still available there. Luther Burden fell out of the first round, so maybe if he's still there, later on in the second where the Chargers take him, I think I would definitely entertain that option as well. So yeah, still several options from the pass catching department that are available in the second round. We'll see if there's a run on them, but if any of those guys make it, I would be pretty happy with that selection.
Yeah, Emeka Egbuka and Matthew Golden go after Tevin McMillan, right? So 4 wide receivers, if you count Travis Hunter, go in the first round, leaving a lot still available, right? Didn't mention Jalen Noel. Also, the guy that we had in the mock round of our second round draft is still available. Trey Harris, a big outside X receiver that would fit a need as far as finding someone to pair with, Ladd McConkey that can win on his own on the outside. Jaden Higgins, the hype train has gone really high on him. I'd be surprised if he's still available, but he fits that role as well. A long-term answer to that big physical X receiver that plays like it. I think the nice thing about Jaden Higgins, or maybe the underrated part, is how many defensive pass interferences that dude caused. It was all over his tape when you watched it, and it's like, that's not going to show up in the box score. But in the NFL, you're getting that ball where that interference happens. It's not just a 15-yard penalty. Yeah. You get it on that spot. So those are two guys, 2 big outside receivers that are still on the board. We'll see how long they stay there, right? You talked about Luther Burden. He'll probably go early, even though he had some concerns as well. Jalen Noel from Iowa State, obviously another guy I mentioned. Elijah Arroyo, he's the guy I have my eye on as far as if they want to go tight end, adding that explosive tight end option in round 2, adding a vertical threat in round 2, I definitely think is a good idea. And then, offensive line, there's going to be guys available, whether it's, a Tate Ratledge if they want to go with a guard. There's also in round 3, potentially, or 4, a Dylan Fairchild that we liked a lot. There's Gerald Wilson if they want to go center in that direction and improve the interior that way, but it seems like they're good with Zion. And then also, David, just finding the guy on the defensive front. Like, there's one guy that I love that's still available after round 1. They could go, even though, a guy like Tyleek Williams ends up sneaking into the first round, because that's just how big the run on defensive lineman was.
It was crazy.
Doesn't feel as deep in the second round as maybe I thought it would. But I love Darius Alexander out of Toledo, and I think one thing we've heard is, hey, in the top 100, this is a really, really good edge class and a really good defensive tackle class. So there is still a chance the Chargers can get a difference-making player on the defensive front to try to really improve that unit after the loss, especially at Puna Ford.
Yeah, Donovan Ezraku also, if they want to go edge, if he's going to be there. I don't know. I think he's probably going to go top end of the second round, because
I would think so.
He was a guy that had some first round buzz attached to him. And even another guy, Michigan, the cornerback Will Johnson falling completely out of the first round. And I know that there's some medical concerns there. That's probably the primary reason behind him falling out. But hey, if he continues to fall and, maybe even gets into range, then I think you have to seriously consider taking him if, you can, get to a good place with where the medicals are. But yeah, still a lot of players, still a lot of starting players that are going to be available on day 2 and with your second and third round pick. But we want to see them address these position groups and, just continue to build out the depth of this football team. I think it's a lot deeper, and they still have 9 more picks to make it as deep as possible.
Yeah, they still have a lot of picks, and it'll be interesting to see. A couple guys we didn't mention, Landon Jackson, edge rusher, still available. JT Tuimoloau, still available from Ohio State. Lots of corners still around if they decide to go in that direction, but I know some people are fans of Mason Taylor at tight end. He's still around as well. But the one thing we did hear from Joe Ortiz tipping his cap a little bit is that the Chargers will not be going running back in round 2.
Surprise!
Surprise anyone. But so I have a surprise for you. We have a bonus episode this week because we are going to be doing another live show tomorrow night after rounds 2 and 3, where I think we get a much better vision of what this roster and how this draft is going to go down, because feel good after day 1, but only because there's so much time left. And we'll see if they can find guys that we like at those big time positional needs, or maybe they try to find additional picks and try to get another top 100 pick tomorrow. We know Joe Ortiz loves to trade, and he showed us last year when he traded up for Ladd McConkey. So to think he's going to go down quietly in this draft class feels unlikely. It feels like there could be a move on the horizon. But I think overall, David, we like the Omarion Hampton pick. They didn't get helped out by the board. There weren't a ton of great players that slid in a draft that's not already not known for having the star players and the great players at the top of it. Omarion Hampton is a very solid pick, but now it's about how you go about addressing the rest of those needs. And make sure you're back with us tomorrow night when we get into it after knowing who their second and third round picks are going to be by subscribing and following for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listening wherever you get your podcast from. We'll be going live. Make sure those notifications are on, whether you follow us on Locked On LAC on Twitter, on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. We'll be posting the show to all of those places. But man, I think I'm excited, after day 1. I think I could be more excited after day 2, and it's going to be so interesting to see what the Chargers do with their second and third round picks tomorrow. But make sure you guys are back with us tonight or tomorrow night, whenever you're listening to this, so you can get our live show after day 2 of the NFL draft. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bulls.